everyone, this is Arusha, and I'm having a bit of a session with you guys today. I've got some really exciting stuff coming your way. So, I've got a good friend and colleague of mine who I've known quite a while actually now. We studied together at the College of Naturopathic Medicine, and her name is Julia Keller. We're going to be doing a bit of a video session for you on aging. So mainly around like how to keep ourselves looking younger as we age, as a lot of us are coming up to that, midlife point where we're worried about our skin and our hair and how our body shape is. And so Julia is her specialism is anti-aging and human longevity. So I just want to kind of introduce you to her. So Julia, can you come on and say a bit about yourself?
Hi, so I'm Julia Keller. Thanks, Arusha, for the introduction, for having me on. I am obsessed with the whole aging process and helping people to not age, basically, or rather to live, to die young at a very old age. That's kind of my obsession. It's Dr. Gundry's quote, by the way. So my whole area, I basically became really interested in aging from a very, very younger age. Let's say from my teens, I watched my mother aging, and I didn't want any part of aging. And I kind of waylaid and didn't know anything about nutrition or anything what to do about that. Just used some fancy creams, which some of them do, some of them don't work. But later on, much later in life, kind of towards more recently, as Arusha, you probably know if you know Arusha, we studied recently together. I started studying nutrition, and this was like my second career because I'd done something completely different before. And I became super interested in aging when I studied naturopathy alongside the nutrition. And so interested, in fact, that I decided to go and do my master's just to be able to do more research on the topic. And so that's what I've been doing. And I've been like really researching the topic and researching people who live longer and why they live longer and what helps us live longer. And that's just been my whole area that I've been looking into, how to help us to slow the aging process down, because it's very debatable if we can stop the aging process, but we can certainly slow it down. In particular, what happens inside our bodies, which also reflects what happens outside our bodies as it happens. So, yeah, happy to share
Amazing.
that with you
Thank
guys.
you, Julia. What a great introduction. And you were brave enough to go on to do the master's and study more further and deep dive into this even further. Now, one of the questions that I have really is, we know, as the famous saying goes, the only thing guaranteed in life is death and taxes,
Yeah.
right? So we know we're on this inevitable collision towards death, really. So why bother? Why bother with slowing down the whole aging process? I'd like to get your view on that, really. What got you into this whole thing when we know at the end we are going to be one food?
It's such a good way to put that question. Sorry, my dog is squeaking next to me. I'm gonna have to take the squeaky toy away from him. So yes, that is true. The inevitable is death and taxes. We will all probably die of something. Now the question is, how do you want to die, and how do you want to live the last years of your life? And I think that's where the why bother comes in, because it's no longer a question of staying alive. Like if you kind of believe the lie, our life expectancy, we are staying alive longer, but
Mm,
in reality, we're not staying alive really longer. We're being propped up by a bunch of medications and drugs, and the last like 10, 20 years of somebody's life can be pretty dismal. And you know really not great. I mean, you can end up with dementia in your 60s, 70s, 80s.
yeah.
The cancer rate is twice as high now than it was when we were born. Actually, probably four times as high than when we were born. Probably twice as high from the 90s. So, the diseases are kind of on an upside, not on a downside. It's just people are learning how to use meds to keep them alive a little bit extra, but not necessarily feeling good. And so the question isn't will you die? The question is, how will you live up until that moment that you die? And that's what I try to help people do. I try to help them to live really well. And if you look at some areas of the world, people
Mm.
live really, really well until their last years. And, that's what I'd like for everybody, everywhere. And it doesn't matter that they're not living in this, they're not lucky enough to be born into this one particular area of the world, or 5 or 6 particular areas of the world where people live really long because of many, many reasons, which I will happily go into, which I have gone into in a lot of my newsletters. But the idea is that we all have a chance to live longer no matter where we live, and we actually do if we follow the right path.
So what
So
I'm
that's the
hearing
why
from
bother.
you, Julia, in regards to this is that it's actually more about quality of life here, isn't it, that we're looking at? It's not about how long you're living, because we know that's inevitable. We could go out into the street and get hit by a bus tomorrow.
Absolutely.
But it's about living each day with vibrancy, vitality, health, energy, which I think a lot of people we see, nearer to the end of their lives or as they age, energy is one of the things that gets hit the most, isn't it? People can barely get out of bed. They
Absolutely.
get into
And,
state.
vitality is really the right word. Vitality, vibrancy. I mean, I see a lot of elderly people in the area where I live,
Mm,
um, walking around and looking very uncomfortable. Like, they're creaky, they're in pain,
pain.
they sometimes have walking sticks, they're not feeling good. But I also see other elderly people walking around, straight up, full vitality, kind of lots of energy. And, why? Why do some people in the same area, why do they live really well? And why some of them age not so well? And
100%.
that's the question I help my clients solve.
I was just going to say, with my own father, for example, he's like about 89. He's just turned 89 this year
Hmm.
recently. And
Older than my parents.
yeah, I mean, well, I'm the baby of the family, but I have a similar kind of aged neighbor. She's a lovely Irish lady, and she's got really severe rheumatoid arthritis, like on crutches. She actually can't even walk
Hmm.
anymore. I mean, I used to see her coming out and having a little stroll in my clothes, and now she's got a carer. She can't really change her clothes on her own. She needs
Yeah.
crutches. But when I look at my dad, it's like, wow, he does like 2 hours of exercise every morning. And
Hmm.
he walks for an hour, like he can easily walk up to an hour every day. And he's just much more healthful and full of that vitality that we were talking about. And I think that is because he's really taken care of his diet and lifestyle. And I was just going to mention about quality of life. We mentioned quality of life over quantity. Reminds me of quality streets right now, because I remember my aunt who actually died of dementia. She had a lot of issues as she grew older. I just remember her having a whole quality box full of pills, actually, not of quality
Yeah,
street.
that's what happens.
And
And
that was
that's what
scary.
worries me, because you start to see people, it used to be, I mean, I don't in the 90s, if you lived to 90, maybe somewhere around your 90s, you'd be your 80s, your 90s, you'd have this box full of pills. Now people start getting this box full of pills in their 50s,
Yeah.
some people in their 40s. By the time they're 60, they're already on like 5 or 6 pills. It's very hard to meet somebody who's in their 60s who's not on a box full of pills.
Yeah.
And that is sad. That's not what life should be like. You shouldn't
It
be propped up
it
by
definitely
medicine.
shouldn't. And the thing with pills is, like, obviously in some circumstances you're going to need those pills which you need to
Mm,
support you through life, because you're now at a stage where you have a disease. But then those pills have their own side effects, which cause
exactly. Every
other
pill
types
has a
of
side effect
disease.
and has a pill to deal with the side effects of that pill, as I've
Exactly.
seen.
And so it's like
I mean,
that
I could talk
free
about my
pharmacy.
own
Mm,
my own grandmother. She died at, around 101, and
well,
I mean, she wasn't even taking blood pressure pills until she was 100, or 95, maybe something like that. But
yeah.
like really, really late into her 90s is when she started taking blood pressure pills. She really didn't take any pills,
Mm,
and that's fun. And it's not because we don't believe in medicine, because my parents are doctors. So, and she was a doctor, so
yeah.
clearly there wasn't any of that. It was literally just the way she lived her life. So
Amazing. That's something to look at, isn't it? And something to study.
mm.
So I do want to go into that a bit more. Just on a more basic level, Julia, can you explain on a kind of more cellular level, on a body level, on a physiology level, what happens? How does this process of aging occur in a way? Why does it occur? Like, what's going on that causes
So
us
there
to
are
age?
there are a lot of theories about aging,
Mhm.
and I don't think you have time for me to go into every single one of these theories. There are a lot of theories about aging. You asked me about some specific one actually earlier. You said something about oxidative stress, and
Yes.
I wanted to think of a way to describe oxidative stress to um, in layman's terms. And so when I thought about it, I thought, okay, first of all, what is oxidative stress? Oxidative stress, and the reason why I mentioned oxidative stress is because that is one theory
Yeah.
that is very prevalent in the whole aging, you know, the whole aging theories, let's
Mhm.
say, community, which is that a lot of the reasons why we kind of end up dying of something is because oxidative stress builds up, and with it inflammation builds up, and we kind of inevitably get to a point where we just have too much of it and our body can't fight everything off. So what is oxidative stress? In layman's terms, it is when the bad guys, so the pro-oxidants, the things that cause the stress, outnumber the good guys. So that's the antioxidants. We all know that, most of us know the word antioxidants. It's the
Mhm.
guys that help us to get rid of the the oxidative stress, to get rid of the problems that whatever it is. So antioxidants basically are just different vitamins and minerals that donate an electron. So what happens is we build up, we build up these pro-oxidants, which they go and they're kind of guys that went crazy. Okay, so they could have been good guys or whatever, but they kind of went nuts, and now they're going and stealing electrons from these little atom bits from the other guys, and so they're creating havoc all around them. But the way that happens is through life. It happens basically overall over time. So if we think of oxidation, if we think of oxidation as a process, if you look up oxidation, you kind of get something like rust as a definition.
Mhm.
So if you think of a nail, if you look at a nail, if you put a nail outside and you expose it to air, to like the smog, whatever it is, you expose it to water, you expose it to the elements outside, it rusts rather quickly. If you keep a nail inside and protect it and kind of like nothing's around it, it's sort of, you know, looking, it's sort of taken care of, it will still rust, but
Mhm.
very, very, very slowly. And so if you think about it, in other words, it's kind of like that whole rusting of us is an inevitable process that happens. We will age
Mhm.
eventually. But if you expose us to more elements that make us rust, to a nail, it's water and, pollution and whatever it is.
Of course.
To us, it's other elements, including pollution, bad water too. If you expose us to more of these elements, we will rust more quickly. And so the idea isn't that we will not rust and eventually need to be replaced by another nail, let's say, but what we want to do is we want to slow that rusting down. We want to keep ourselves that healthy, shiny looking nail, like the nail when you buy it out of the store and you take it out of the box and it's all silver and lovely, and it kind of shines even. We want to keep ourselves that nail for as long as humanly possible. Now, inevitably, we all will eventually become the rusty nail. But if we can prolong that process, make it slow, isn't that so much better? Isn't that so much more fun? Like think about the rusty nail. Like it's not really functional after some time. So, oxidation is the process of us rusting in effect.
Great
And so,
analogy, Julia. Thank you for that. And I
yeah,
say you're rusting very gracefully.
thank you.
But can I just explore that a little bit? Because, like you gave the
Mm,
examples of how a nail would rust, you said pollution,
hmm
water that would, create the triggers for the rusting. What are the key triggers for us as humans? How are we polluting ourselves to speed up this aging process? What are the key or main factors that are
So,
contributing?
unfortunately, it's so easy these days for many reasons. I mean, pollution is still very true for us.
Yeah.
There is a lot more crap in the air, no matter where you live, and unless you live in like Longevity Village, which is kind of untouched. It's a place in China where people happen to live really long. And you have really, really pure, clean water, which they do. And you have really, really pure, clean air because there's not a lot of machinery there. You're probably exposed to the elements. And all of us, I mean, I live on a street that's, it's not super busy, but it's also not that far from a highway, and it's not super quiet either. So I'm constantly exposed to that. So that's, one exposure. Drinking bad water is another exposure. But even, worse so is like people expose themselves on purpose. So they will smoke cigarettes, or they'll smoke, their vape, which for some reason people are thinking is better than cigarettes. That's a huge exposure to toxins. So any kind of toxin exposure, even acrylamide exposure. So what are acrylamides? Acrylamides are when you smoke smoke foods, or you grill foods, or you not saute, but when you like fry foods and you do it, like deep frying, those are all acrylamides. When you burn your toast, that's an acrylamide. So these are all, things that food is exposed to. So that's another thing. But even the foods we eat. So even if we try to have like even if we just eat, we don't grill and whatever, microwave and expose our food, but we just eat processed food of any kind, right away has crap in it. So if you're looking at food and you look and you see more than a few ingredients that you recognize, you're most likely exposing yourself to some kind of toxins, because any kind of chemicals and processing stuff added to your food is going to expose you to toxins, which are pro-oxidant. Eating too much sugar, drinking any kind of, I will stand up on a pedestal and talk about basically the negativity of any kind of smoking and drinking any kind of processed, beverages, meaning most, processed bubbly beverages. So any kind of soda, whatever you call it in this country.
Fizzy drinks
fizzy drinks, but not even carbonated water is worse for you than still water. It just is, because the carbonation has a little bit of bad stuff. Not as bad for you as soda. So if you're going off of drinking 2 Coca-Colas a day, by all means drink your carbonated water with some lemon or mint or both, or raspberries. That's much better for you than the soda. Soda is literally one of the worst things you can do to your health in general.
And then you've got the sugar in there as well, which you mentioned. So could you go into that a bit?
But even but diet drinks are worse for you than sugary drinks. I mean, people are like, well, I'm drinking Diet Coke, it's much better for you. I'm like, no, it's actually worse for you, because that's cancer-causing stuff in that.
Can you just explain that a little bit? Why are they worse? It would naturally seem to people that
for two reasons. Two reasons. One, because they have cancer-causing materials. All of the saccharins and the NutraSweets and all of those have been found to be potentially carcinogenic at high temperatures. And to be fair, that plastic bottle is exposed to high temperatures anytime it's sitting there under the lights. It's exposed to all these temperature changes, and the plastic has probably leaked in. And in general, it's been exposed to high temperatures when it's made, that soda. So it is definitely, all of those things, those sweeteners are carcinogenic. But the second reason is something even crazier, which we wouldn't even think about, which is the fact that your body, when it's drinking something sweet, is expecting energy from it. So when we have fructose or glucose coming naturally, so like from fruit, we have fructose coming naturally. And there are some natural versions of glucose, which are not that bad for you. Your body is using that as energy. So it's processing that. When it's drinking saccharin or NutraSweet or sweeteners of any kind, it is tasting something sweet. It is expecting energy, and it's not getting it. So your body gets pissed off, and it's like, well, where's my energy? And so it over creates the thing to process the energy, which is the insulin, but it's not actually getting any energy, which means that it's then creating the situation of like, oh, I'm not getting energy, but I'm expecting it. So it stores fat more readily. You can become insulin resistant, which is why sodas have been linked to diabetes. I mean, so many people who study
epidemic in the States.
Obesity epidemic. So many people who study it.
Chugging down soda in bucket loads, aren't they? They're really
there's one great talk by Dr. Gundry actually on YouTube, which is all about diabetes and how and obesity and how this whole epidemic started. And he right away he did the speech to college campus, and he linked He said, look, as Coca-Cola was created, so did the obesity epidemic.
Wow.
So I mean, there are so many
It's
links.
like
So
liquid sugar, basically, that you're just,
liquid sugar.
yeah.
I mean, even I would say even don't drink processed juices. You know, I'm to that level. I don't even have processed juices in my house.
What
But
would
I
you
mean,
say
if you're
about
gonna,
fresh fruit juices? What would you say about that?
so if you freshly squeeze something, it's always going to be better
Mhm.
than if you have a process of any kind. Freshly squeezed is always better.
Yeah.
I would always say smoothies over juices because smoothies have the
Fiber.
fiber. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. 100%.
But a freshly squeezed juice is 100 times better for you than a processed juice, and millions of times better than a Coca-Cola.
Great.
I
Amazing.
mean, I would say if you're gonna give up two horrible habits, it's give up smoking and give up Coca-Cola. And in fact, at the
That's
end of the
linked to
day,
the resveratrol, isn't it? Like we know about
yes.
resveratrol being an antioxidant, which you could quite easily get from grapes as well. So could
And to
quick,
something called hormesis,
oh,
which also happens to you when you exercise. So that's another thing to say, that people who exercise to moderate degrees,
yeah.
actually moderate exercise, by the way, just so you guys don't get lazy and think, oh, I stood up and I did a jumping jack, that's moderate exercise.
Yeah.
No,
That
moderate
me last
exercise is
year.
about 60 to 90 minutes of movement a day. Okay? That's moderate exercise. People who exercise moderately on a regular basis fare much better than people who over exercise. So athletes, for example, you look at athletes when they retire and when they get older, and yes, you can say, okay, they don't, they don't keep going at the rate they're going. Some of them, just neglect their bodies, whatever. But a lot of them actually do worse health wise. They don't outlive people who are not athletes.
Wow.
Not athletes actually outlive athletes.
It's amazing.
So
Mhm.
there is a reason, because your body needs hormesis, which is this kind of level of adapting to stress.
Yeah.
So that's another thing to say, is that stress is not always bad. There is a certain level of adapting to stress that is good for your body, that
Yeah.
actually helps your body to de-age or to stay younger longer. So exercising on a regular basis, 60 to 90 minutes of movement on a regular basis, and active movement preferably, but any kind of movement really, you need like 30 minutes of really active movement, even less really, and then the rest of it in moderate any kind of movement, you're good.
So we don't want to be
That's why
doing
HIIT
that
exercise is so popular.
extreme, exercising that some people are doing like 6, 7 hours at the gym daily. That
No, the six
thing.
7 hours at the gym is horrible. Most of the people I know who do extreme exercise, especially who do extreme exercise at like every once in a while,
Mm.
they are very ill. So I've had a couple of clients. I've had a couple of clients who were big cyclists, but they would cycle like what they would do, the big cycling kind of thing once a month or once a week. They would do this big cycling thing of like 4 hours, and
Mm.
the rest of the week they would do nothing. And they would eat crappy food with their cycle, and they'd have a pizza afterwards. And I was like, what are you doing? And they would get so ill. And they were actually some of the most unhealthy people, even though they don't look unhealthy. They look okay, up to a certain age. And then when they get to be like 50s, 60s, then all of a sudden they start looking, worse than their age.
Yeah.
So
And it's almost like
there
they
is,
think, okay, you can eat whatever you want and then do all the
mm,
cycling, and that might, just save you. And it ends up
yeah,
canceling out, So if you're over exercising by eating healthy, or if you're eating healthy, but then you're not eating healthy and then just thinking you can get away with the exercise, it doesn't work. You need both go hand in hand.
absolutely. And it's the same thing with drinking, actually. There is the same level of hormesis with drinking, which a lot of the places where people live longer, not all of them, by the way, just so
Mm.
you guys don't get too excited and think you can drink your way. I'm not recommending in any way drinking, but people who think like, oh, I'm allowed 1 glass of wine a day, I'm going to save it until Friday and have my 7 glasses then. Um, no, that is the opposite of hormesis. Hormesis is building up a little bit every time. So you cannot, and you should never go beyond that little bit.
Mm.
Um, a little bit is good. A whole like lot of it is bad. So
Yeah.
if you build up and do everything on Friday, that's much worse than not doing than doing one a little bit at a time. In fact, that's bad for you. Let's say that's bad for you. If you want 1 glass of wine with your meal with company, that can have beneficial effects, but those beneficial effects go away mighty fast when you go and have nothing and then have a drinking binge.
Of
Any
course.
kind of binges are bad for you. So this is a cycling binge, a running binge. Why people who run marathons
Mm.
aren't necessarily that healthy.
It's all about that moderation, isn't it? Or
It's the
any kind of
moderation.
extremes puts the body
Yeah, people who
into an
walk and
extreme
hike on
situation.
a regular basis are doing better than people who run marathons on a regular basis.
Amazing.
Because you overexercise to run a marathon. You tax your body too much. Your body can't take it.
So essentially
And
speeding up the aging process, isn't it? Because your
yeah.
body's having to work harder. Can I just touch upon you talked about Longevity Island earlier. And we
Mm,
know, and we studied this, of course, when we were, studying nutrition. You've probably studied it in much more depth, but this idea that there's certain areas in the world where people live and there's like their longevity is just really great and they live up to 100 and they're the most populated areas of 100-year-olds.
mhm.
And we know there's places like Okinawa in Japan, Ikaria in Greece. Could you tell me a little bit about what
Yeah.
studies have found? Why is their aging so great? And
Yeah, I've actually studied them. I'm studying them now in very good depth for my thesis.
yeah,
Funny enough,
great.
I'm kind of obsessed. I'm obsessed with them a bit. So there are many reasons. So first of all, there are six places. We know about five called blue zones,
Yeah.
and then Longevity Island was discovered in China. It's not actually officially one of the blue zones, but it was discovered by a different researcher where they live even longer than the blue zones, supposedly.
Wow.
But the reason it was never mentioned in the blue zones is because they don't have birth certificates because of where they were during, communist China's kind of takeover and all of that.
Mm.
A lot of them were so isolated from the rest of mainland China, which is to their benefit longevity wise, that they don't have a lot of them don't have birth certificates kind of connecting them because they're so old. The old people don't. Um, and the main thing about them and the other five blue zones, the other five blue zones are Sardinia, Italy. There's Okinawa, Greece, as you said. Okinawa, Japan. Ikaria, Greece. There's Loma Linda, California. And there's a place in Costa Rica. So yeah, like really cool places to visit at some point when you have a chance. And they're all have certain things in common, and I wrote about them. I did a whole video series on everything and wrote about them in my newsletter. So if you guys want to check it out, no, it's not Coach. It's actually Healthy Aging Nutrition on my Instagram and my Facebook. I have that on there, or
Amazing. Yeah.
juliakeller.co.uk. I wrote so much about them and did videos, and I put 9 elements that were isolated by a writer called Dan Buettner, who discovered them, or he wasn't the first one who discovered them, but he's the one that wrote the most about them. And he did a lot of articles about them and has a book about them, so it's quite interesting. So certain elements about them that they all have in common. One, they don't eat any processed food. So really, like they don't have the ability to eat processed food. It's not even there really. It doesn't like just come. It doesn't come to their area because they're so isolated. A lot of these areas, they just they don't eat them. Most of them, well, not all of them. Most of them drink wine in moderation, though not all of them, to be
Mhm.
fair. The China one, not so much, and Loma Linda, California, not at all, because they're 7 Day Adventists.
And
Um,
Hunza, I think from my region in, Pakistan, where I'm from, I think there's the Hunza people. You must have heard of those
yes, there
with the
is them as
apricots.
well.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, the one thing that's really important to know about them is not just that they live well past 100, it's that they live well past 100 without being propped up by drugs. So they live
Amazing.
healthy until their last day. They look 20 years younger than their age easily. They actually act 20 years younger than their age. They move around
Yeah,
like a 40-year-old when they're over 100. So that's, it's incredible to watch them.
it
Um,
is. Yeah.
because these are people that actually don't look their age, they don't act their age, they don't feel their age. That's what's
And you
incredible.
can actually see
And
them doing daily tasks like normal
yeah,
people,
they do daily. Well, that's another
waking
thing.
up
They
and
exercise is a part of their life.
yeah,
It's not something they do at the gym.
yeah.
So this whole going to the gym, a lot of it is, exercise should be a part of your daily existence. It's not about, I'm not saying I'm definitely go to the gym if that's your only way to get exercise. If that's the only creativity you can have, go to the gym. But exercise should be a part of your daily life. Like these people lift things, that's how they do their weights.
Yeah.
They walk everywhere. They walk from, their house to their neighbor's house, which might be, 2-3 miles away, kilometers away, depending on where you are. So it's like it's part
Gardening.
of it's what
They do a lot
and
of
they eat.
like growing their own vegetation.
Exactly. Well, that's the
Their
other
own
thing. They
food.
eat fresh produce.
Yeah.
They eat. Most of them eat a fair amount of seafood, with the exception of Loma Linda, where they're vegetarians or vegans. But the vegetarians actually fare better than the vegans. And
The
they
Seventh
eat
Day
very little meat.
Adventists as well. Are they not primarily vegan? I thought.
So they are vegetarian or vegan.
Okay, right.
There's two kinds of 7-day Adventists.
Oh,
There's either vegetarian or vegan.
Right.
And I believe the vegetarians fare slightly better than the vegans. But they're the only ones, by the way, out of all of these, they're the only ones that are actually not. They don't eat any animal products. So when I say no animal products, I mean like not even fish.
Wow.
So the rest of them eat fish on a very regular basis. They eat fish that they catch in the sea. They basically, whatever they catch in the sea, they'll eat it. So if there's a catch one day, they'll have it. If there's no catch one day, they won't have it. And they eat meat very irregularly.
So how irregularly are we talking about? Because with meat, we know it's become, this a supply and demand situation where people, the supply is huge, so the demand is also matches that
right
with all our factors.
And bad for our environment, by the way.
Exactly.
It's very, meat is very taxing
there's
on our
documentaries on this stuff, right?
Yeah.
But my question is, so how regularly should we be eating meat? Because you said, okay, a little bit of meat they include in their diet, but we're seeing people eating like twice, thrice a day animal protein, right?
Oh, that's horrible. So
what are you talking about here?
So the 7-day Adventists and the in the Loma Linda. So actually, funny enough, Loma Linda. So they don't eat any meat. They also don't eat any fish. So they will, like I said, they are either vegetarians or vegans. They are actually the least long-lived of the long-lived zones.
Oh wow.
The others eat a lot of fish and they will have meat. So if you look at Okinawa, Japan is a great example because they have this triangle of like they're eating, and you can find it on Google actually, where meat is at the very top of their triangle. So they will eat it maybe once every other week, once a month. It's really like, when is their meat available to kill kind of thing. You know what I mean? It's not all the time. Like that's how they kind of live.
Way of having it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like if you have,
and it's very natural. It's very good quality meat because
organic
it is
as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, they don't know the word organic because everything's organic there. Everything is freshly made on the land, If one, you've got like certain whatever meat running around and it's just there. Like it's not fed crappy, feed made out of corn and, really bad grains.
GMO
there's
grains,
no
exactly.
antibiotics and whatever, exactly, no GMO grains. It's not fed, crappy quality. So that's the lesson. Like Sardinia, yes, they eat a little bit of meat. In Caria, Greece, they probably eat the most meat. But again, most of them are places where there's water around them, so they fish and they get what's in the sea, and they meat is eaten when it's available, and that availability is most likely around once every month. Sometimes maybe less than that, sometimes a little bit more than that. Sometimes it might be every 2 weeks, but it's definitely not eaten once a day.
Yeah.
And I have so many clients that come to me and say, surely a little bit of chicken, a couple times a day is not bad. I'm just like, well, it depends what you're after. We know
that meat products, animal proteins, they contribute to our arachidonic acid levels in the body, which is an inflammatory product which is produced as a result. So that does contribute to some level of inflammation, right? And we don't want the inflammation because, as you talked about earlier, due to the oxidative stress and inflammation's linked to that, and that does contribute to the aging, right? So we don't want to be having
arachidonic acid has a little bit of a bad name, as I found out while I was doing some research. So It's good and bad. There are also some studies that show that arachidonic acid is contributing to better brain function, but we
Mm.
can get that arachidonic acid from things that are not meat. Meat is inflammatory for other reasons as well. It's not so much just the arachidonic acid pathway. Um, we can get arachidonic acid from eggs, and eggs have are a really good source of
B12,
vitamins.
choline, that kind of stuff. Yeah, stuff we
Exactly.
prefer as well.
Phosphatidylserine, phosphatidylcholine, which are really good for brain function,
Of course.
for example. So it's very good for memory. But obviously, eggs are also, you can have too many eggs because they lead to can heighten your cholesterol because, that's one of the issues. Though that's also debatable. But meat is inflammatory because one, because of the feed that it gets. So most of the time we're not eating good quality meat, even when it says it's organic. We can't really vouch for what it's been fed. And the rule is, you are whatever you ate is. So you are not just what you eat, you are whatever you ate. So
That's a good way of putting
so
it.
yeah, so
Okay.
that's so you basically you're the end of the food chain. If you think about like the big fish, the big fish eats the little fish, and the little fish eats the smaller fish, and the smaller fish eats the even smaller fish. You watch the fish food chain, and that's how it's
That's
going.
why the
And
quality is so important, isn't it? Because I'd read a lot
mm,
about, pesticides, herbicides, heavy metals can accumulate
yeah,
in the tissues, isn't it? And we know that with DDT when we used to study at school,
right.
it would accumulate in the, food chain. So
But
that
the other things with meat is also saturated fat.
of course,
So
yeah.
there are good saturated fats like coconut oil, like like ghee has some good saturated. There are certain things that have positive saturated fats. Meat is not one of those things. Meat has saturated fat, which actually does lift your cholesterol and is not good for you. It also can cause, insulin resistance. So meat causes an insulin spike, much like we've been taught that, some carby foods like pasta and cakes and cookies, blah, 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 cause insulin spikes. Meat does a lot of that.
Yeah.
Um, and like milk, for example, does that too. So there's a lot of, it's very confusing these days what you can eat and what you can't eat because there's so much available and there's so many different health claims on products saying this is healthy, this is good for you, eat me, and like cereal says healthy for you, fortified with all these vitamins. What that actually means is they took something that's basically manufactured, um, and added some vitamins to it. I mean, like take a supplement. Take one little pill. It's better for you because it doesn't have all the crap that's, in the cereal that's going to
And then
lift
you get a
your
lot of additives and numbers,
yeah.
sugar along with that as well. So
Look at
yeah,
ingredients is the key. If you look at ingredients and you see lots of words that you can't pronounce, most likely it's not good for
stay
you. And
away.
I would say that
Yeah,
for your shampoos, I would say that for your creams that you're using, I mean, it's
keep
very
it
hard. I would
simple.
say that for your chemical products, what you're using to clean your house, it's very hard to live a completely clean life. So choose your battles, obviously. You need to eat something and you need to survive. You need to clean your house. You need to wash your hair. But try to choose things as clean as possible, as much as you can. Because those things that are not clean, those are all pro-oxidant things inside there. And those pro-oxidants then lead to oxidative stress, which leads to inflammation, which leads to a lot of, diseases as we age. I mean,
Exactly.
all disease in the end comes down to inflammation. And so back to the rusting theory of the nail, yes, we will all rust eventually, but we could rust quicker or we can rust more slowly. And so what we want to do is we want to try to keep the load of pro-oxidants, things, the bad guys that are, in our bodies as low as possible.
Possible,
We want to keep
exactly.
it down
So,
because
Julia, give
that will
us
help us.
some anti-rusting tools, please. Can you tell us what
Yes.
foods, what herbs, what things can we be doing to minimize this rusting process within the body?
So the best thing you can do to minimize your rusting process is to add loads of antioxidants into your daily living. So
Mhm.
how do you do that? One, so antioxidants, and also I'm going to tell you about lifestyle too. So antioxidants are found in fruits and vegetables mostly. That's mostly where you find them. Now the problem is that we can't guarantee our soil anymore. In fact, I have a friend that owns a orange farm in South Africa, and he tested his oranges because he's really concerned that they're, have the vitamin C that they promise, and found out that one particular growth had absolutely zero vitamin C, nothing. They look just like every other growth. They're
Mm,
just as beautiful. They're just as orange. They look just as nice. No vitamin C at all.
gosh,
Um, so that,
don't
and we
know what
don't.
you're
That's not.
eating
It's not
anymore.
his fault. But that's the point. Is we don't know what we're eating anymore. And the more your fruits and vegetables are processed, like in other words, they're not organic, the
Mm,
more they're sprayed, the less you know what you're eating. So you can't guarantee, but still, even though you can't guarantee, you're still better off putting those in you than not. What that means is eat, and I tell my clients eat 7 to 8 fistfuls of vegetables a day and 2 to 3 fistfuls of fruit. And you want to eat fruit which is in season and preferably less sweet. So your green bananas are better than your perfectly ripe bananas.
yeah.
Your berries are better than your grapes, for example. So it's stuff like that. So you try to eat as much in season as you can
And
because
what
then
about the whole
you'll eat better.
organic, non-organic? I mean, it's very expensive,
So if
right?
it's
So what
so
would
that's
you
the whole point
recommend?
of like if you're spraying your stuff, that means that your fruit or vegetable isn't able to defend itself from environment on its own because it's sprayed, it's being helped. So it gets lazy. It's like us, if we're being fed junk food all the time, we kind of get lazy when it's in front of the TV. So it's the same with our fruits and vegetables. They just get lazy. They're like, well, it's going to be done for me. So they don't bother making the things, the anti-nutrients that can be good for us, or making, they might then not come out with such great load. They might not have that many vitamins. So
Mm,
you're just better off being things that, plus, let's be honest, any of that spray stuff, it's coming into our bodies. Like you
yeah.
can't, it doesn't matter how well you clean that fruit, you're not getting it out.
It's just gonna,
So
it just ends up having a canceling effect, doesn't it, in a way?
yeah, and that actually is pro-oxidant as well. Those chemicals are really bad for us. So we want to make sure that we eat as much as possible organic food. So there's many reasons for organic food. That's one. The other thing is I highly recommend supplements. Now, I know you're not going to have enough time for me to talk about all the supplements, but let's just get people started
Okay.
with a
Yeah.
a multivitamin. Just because that has all the vitamins you need. You need your B vitamins, you need, your C's, your zinc. The
Yeah.
multivitamin, like go for a multivitamin that's good quality, from a good supplier. So trust Arusha or me or whoever, your nutritional therapist is, because we will know better suppliers.
Mhm.
And, you know, a multivitamin is like the best place you can start. And
And
try to get
also
one
the
that's specifically made
levels,
for you.
because in supplements, you can just get minuscule amounts of the actual
That's why you
minerals
you
and
have a
vitamins. So
good that's why
exactly,
you
you
want a
need to go for
good supplier.
the best quality, really. Um,
Yeah, you want a good supplier. So that's the other thing, is things that have high flavonoid levels. So things like green tea is really healthy for you. There's loads of antioxidants in green tea, and people who drink green tea on a regular basis actually live longer. It's been
wow.
shown. Things like nuts are, not peanuts, by the way, but like good quality nuts like macadamias, pistachios, even almonds. Things like that. Um,
What about
are going to
walnuts for
be
brain function as
walnuts.
well?
Walnuts are great. Yeah, walnuts look like a little mini brain,
They do,
and so
don't
they
they?
are good for your brain. Yeah, like nuts are great. So there are loads of things you can
But then
do.
you can overdo it on the nuts. So
Yes,
in
you can
small
overdo it because
quantities, right?
it
Yeah.
has good fat, but it still has fat.
Yeah.
So, limit your nut intake. Even dark chocolate, if it's over 73%. And if you have a diabetes issue, I would go for over 80, 90% even.
Mm.
Um, it has a lot of flavonoids. It's good for you.
So you
So
don't
things
have to
like
be
that.
completely deprived of chocolate. That's great.
No, you don't have to be deprived. So if you're trying to cut your sugar, what I usually do when I try to cut my sugar is I opt for dark chocolate, when I'm craving sugar, but I'm trying to cut it down. Dark chocolate, dates, berries, fruits in season, all those things. So there's so much you
What would
can
you
do.
say about people who are scared to go for the dates, thinking they're really quite high sugar?
So dates, I would be, a little bit more cautious with. Dates have a lot of positive benefits, and there's so many positive benefits. I think I did a video at one point, and I talked about dates, and because I love
You can
dates.
do a whole session on just dates because
Yeah,
they have so
absolutely.
many
But
benefits.
they do have a lot of sugar.
Yeah.
So I would opt for, if you have an issue where you need to lose weight and sugar
Mm,
is a problem, minimize the amount.
yeah. You
But
won't be
they do
going
have lots of positive benefits, especially for people who have, they don't go that often.
yeah,
Dates, prunes,
constipation. Also, I've
yeah,
read about it being great for like actually providing energy when for newly expectant
absolutely.
mothers, pregnancy,
Hmm.
it's got a whole host of
Yeah, I have an
vitamins.
infatuation with dates personally. So
Yeah. Any other foods you can just quickly touch on before
I
we
mean,
wrap up?
cruciferous vegetables. So cruciferous vegetables, I have an obsession with as well. Things like broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, spinach, kale, Brussels sprouts. A lot of the vegetables that are right now in season, actually, like winter
Winter
vegetables,
vegetables, yeah.
and so those are amazing for you. They have actually been matched with cancer prevention, so they're killing off cancer tumors. There's been a lot of in vitro studies
Mm.
where they show that they're really, really good for killing off cancer cells. Another thing is mushrooms. So mushrooms in general, it's like one of the most superfoods. That's superfood. It's amazing, and any kind of mushroom. They make
Even button
mushroom tablets.
mushrooms. Yeah.
Mushrooms are amazing for you. They like mushrooms is like the best kept secret that has been around for like emperors used to hoard mushrooms because they realized how longevity boosting they are.
I
And
mean,
there
you've
are
got
a
to be
couple of
careful
mushrooms
with
that
the
are
mushrooms,
particularly.
right? Because you can't just go picking random mushrooms and foraging for them. Some can be quite poisonous. Yeah.
Yes,
I
you have
mean,
to be
I
careful with
just
mushrooms.
recently read about two boys who had come over, like as from Afghanistan, and they were just kind of out, and they saw these little mushrooms, and they picked them and ate them. And sadly, it was like so poisonous, it was deadly, and so
Yeah, don't go foraging for mushrooms unless you actually know what you're doing.
yeah,
Luckily
exactly.
for you, they have loads of mushroom mixes in loads of supermarkets.
Plus
And
the
if you go to
supermarket. Yeah.
any kind of organic like store, they will have these really cool wild mushroom mixes, and then you get everything you need.
Amazing.
They also have mushroom pills. So there's a lot of studies coming out of Japan where people have been using mushrooms alongside chemo, and the only reason that they've done the studies with mushrooms alongside chemo is because you can't do a study with mushrooms against chemo. But apparently, mushroom tablets alongside chemo have boosted people's recovery from chemo and boosted people's recovery from cancer
Yeah.
in general
Mm.
over just chemo. So they're not allowed to study just mushrooms
Yeah.
because it's not something you're allowed to study. It's just you don't not
I
you're not
mean,
allowed
I
to.
remember we learned about turkey tail specifically with
Mm,
I think breast cancer it was as well support.
yeah,
So that's amazing. Any others
but there are.
that you want?
I'm just thinking what else. So I said cruciferous vegetables, mushrooms, green tea, dark chocolate.
Any
There's
specific
so much
herbs?
really. Sorry.
Any herbs that you know of that?
Yes, herbs, absolutely. So herbs, there are loads and loads. So herb, I'm not even going to get complicated with herbs. I'm going to be really simple. The herbs that you buy in your supermarket are already great for you.
Yeah.
Whether the fresh is great, but even dried herbs. I mean, there are so many dried herbs. If you just sprinkle things
Yeah.
onto your foods, are
So
amazing.
easy to
Turmeric, for
do.
example.
So easy to do. Just
Turmeric,
do
which
a
is
salt.
used
Mm.
so much in Indian cooking, is anti-inflammatory. Garlic, ginger, those are amazing things that just anti-parasitic, antioxidant. They're
Antiviral.
antiviral, yeah, antibacterial. I mean, there's so much. There's a
We
something
did
in
this the other
garlic.
day with you, though. We have to tell them what happened with you and the
Oh,
concoction you took.
yes, I mean I had kind of a viral, I don't know what it was, but yeah, it was a viral reaction to something. Um, I don't know if it was food poisoning or a stomach virus. I think now it was a stomach bug. And
Mm.
I made myself this crazy tea concoction with all of this, these different herbs, including green tea,
Yeah.
that helps to fight everything, whatever it was that I had,
We put some
and
ginger in
included
there.
in
We
that.
put some of those things that you mentioned, didn't you? So,
Yeah, and included in that, I put in there ginger and lemon, manuka honey, and wormwood, which is anti-parasitic, and I think I put like powder arco, which is anti bac bacterial, and I put like whatever I had in the house basically.
and within
Um,
a day, you were sorted.
yeah, I was much better. Like very quickly, I was much better.
Amazing.
So there's so much, just your basic cooking herbs
Yeah.
are amazing for you. I
Just
mean, if
being
you think
conscious
about
to
like
get
right now,
more of
turmeric
it.
latte you can get anywhere.
Yeah.
That's really good for you. Matcha latte you can get anywhere almost. Amazing for you.
Yeah.
It's
Like,
it's not hard these days to stay healthy if you want to. Oh, and probiotics are amazing. Anything that helps your gut bacteria to
mm.
survive is going to be good for your. It's going to be good for your anti-inflammatory and for your aging.
I was just going to
Because
touch
what
upon
what
that actually, because obviously my whole speciality is around the gut and gut,
yeah.
support, healing leaky gut, lowering the inflammation. So, that's great that you've mentioned that actually that can be supportive of anti-aging as well. And I'm
Mm,
assuming it's from the
absolutely.
same lowering inflammation standpoint that we talked about.
So so there's a lot of studies now about um, how you are not you. You are actually your bacteria. You're a hotel for your bacteria, basically. And
Amazing.
we have good bacteria and bad bacteria. So if you think about the good guys, they want to take care of their home. They
Mm.
look after you. And so if you take care of the good guys, they will look after you. Your skin will look better, you will feel better, you will eat better, you will feel happier. But then you get the bad guys, and the bad guys, they don't care about looking after you because all they want is like to have parties and cause ruckus, basically. So, the bad guys eat the processed food, the sugars, the pasta, the, breads, all that stuff
All
that
the
isn't good for
processed
you.
junk,
Um, yeah,
basically.
the junk, basically. The good guys, what do they crave? They crave vegetables. They crave a lot of starchy, like positive starches. They like those. So something like sweet potato, um, for example, not potato, but sweet potato. Um, so things like that, like those kind of rutabaga, yam, especially wild yam, pumpkin. There are certain things that they want to eat. Parsnips, that are carrots. Like I just keep thinking more and more things.
All the
Um,
earthy root vegetables.
the earthy root vegetables. Yeah, not potatoes though.
I'm just conscious of time, Julia. I just quickly
Yes,
want you to quickly touch on fasting a little bit, because I know
yes.
that also has a really positive
Okay.
effect. So could you just give us a bit of a
Fasting
rundown on?
is fasting is amazing. It's something. So there are a lot of studies now coming out saying linking one of the best ways that you can prolong your longevity is by calorie restricting on a regular basis. So you can calorie restrict in many ways. I find the easiest way to calorie restrict is through something like intermittent fasting, where you just don't eat for anywhere between 16 hours, 20 hours, depending on, how you want to do it. You can do something called the 5-2 diet, which is, 5 days a week you eat normally, and 2 days a week you eat, let's say, one meal. What the idea is to keep it within 500, 600 calories.
Yeah.
That was the original, but then they saw people couldn't do that, so they lifted up to 900 calories. I personally prefer if you just say one meal and make it not a huge meal,
Yeah.
because for me, I don't count calories. I don't believe in that.
And how
Um,
often should you do that? Like, how regular?
so
'Cause
if you're
as a
doing the
Muslim,
5-2,
I
you do
fast like
that every.
30
If you do
days
the
is tough.
5-2, you do
Mm,
that all the time. So every
okay.
week, 5 days a week you eat normally, and 2 days a week you eat, limited, let's say to one meal a day.
Yeah.
But I think it's easier for client when I work with clients, I find it easier for them to do something like a 16, 20 hour, 18-hour, 20-hour fast every once in a while.
Mm,
Um, and so the way that would look is, let's say one day you stop eating at like 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, maybe even 6 o'clock. And the idea is, 4 hours before you go to bed. And then the next day you don't eat again until 16 hours later. And if you do that on a regular basis, and then you make sure that your first meal is your biggest meal and your last meal is your smallest meal, and you try not to snack in between, that allows your body to de-stress, and it's good for your body. It's the easiest way to do calorie restriction.
It's able
So
to
another
start
way is
clearing
obviously
up
just to eat
those
less.
toxins, isn't it? Like you give your body a bit of a rest.
Yeah,
You know, it
you
starts
give your
doing
body
a bit of a clear up, you know, and it's not
absolutely. I mean,
focus on
when I
digestion.
wasn't feeling well, I fasted for like probably, I mean, I ate almost nothing for 24 hours. I drank liquids, obviously. Um, I drank this tea concoction I made, but I really didn't eat anything. And my body was just like, didn't even want to eat. And I was like, I didn't eat. And I swear the next day my skin looked the best it has for in a long time. I was just like, wow, my skin looks really good. And it was just the fasting, and it's like food actually clogs up our systems. We don't realize how much until we
Mhm.
notice it on our skin, because that's what we notice first. And you do see the difference when you fast for a while, and when you don't.
Well,
You
it's
see
just
when
the
you've been eating
same as
crappy
your
food.
own house, for example. You know, if you're constantly
Mm,
bringing things into the house and never tidying it up, you know, it looks like a
absolutely.
mess, right? So it's the same thing. You've got to have this
Yeah.
house cleaning with your body. And fasting is a great
Plus,
way to do it. It's a great tool to do that.
absolutely. Plus, if we want to prevent dementia, we need to give our brain time to really, really rest at night.
Mm.
And it's very hard to give your brain rest time if your body is digesting. It's hard to give your brain processing time if it's concentrating on making sure that your gut is like working and digesting and food is being kind of burnt. It can't really do both. So if you're eating late at night and then going to bed, you're not getting your most best quality sleep, and
So
then your brain isn't taken care of, and that over time can lead to dementia.
scary stuff, but you've given us some
Mm.
great tools to kind of
Yeah.
work towards prevention of that. So
It's a start here.
Julia, I could go on for hours with you, and
Yeah.
we've got to do another session for sure on this. But thank you so much for your time. Just once again, where can people find you if they want to find out more about anti-aging? How do they get a hold of you? How do they see your stuff?
So the best thing is to go to my website, juliakeller.co.uk. And the other ways is to go to my Instagram or my Facebook, which are both Healthy Aging Nutrition. Now, aging is spelled AGING, like in the States, not like in the UK. Healthy Aging Nutrition. That's under Facebook or Instagram. We will eventually have a website as well, but for now it's Healthy Aging Nutrition. That's my social media. We do a lot of newsletters. If you go to my website, you can sign up for my newsletter, and every week we come out with a newsletter to give you a tip about healthy aging. It's where I'm kind of obsessed, and I get lots and lots of tips through my research, so I pass that on to you.
And it's where I
I
get my
do a
tips from
free
as well.
Yeah,
I'm
I do a free
always
20-minute session with people if they just want to ask me like one question or a couple of questions, um, quickly. I give that for free, just to help out, kind of thing. And I'm on YouTube. If you look up Julia Keller Coaching, you can find me there.
That's fantastic. You've been amazing, Julia, as always.
Thanks.
And I hope to catch up again with you soon. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks.
Take